Chapter 3, 5 Strangers, 1 Ship. I am Bryce of the Cinder Archive, and this is Chapter 3, 5 Strangers, 1 Ship. They have a lead now, a sky pirate captain, a strange new engine, a destination somewhere along the rift's ragged edge, and a charter booked to get them there. What they don't have yet is any idea how to be 5 people instead of 5 strangers who happen to be going the same direction. That part, as it turns out, doesn't wait for the fight to start. It starts on the dock, the moment somebody has to decide who's paying for the rope. Chat. Nobody at the charter dock office wants to be the one holding the coin purse, which is how the argument starts, and nobody wants to be the one giving orders, which is how it refuses to end. I'm not fronting the deposit, Wick says, for the second time, to a clerk who has clearly had this exact conversation with other groups and is enjoying it slightly less each time. I didn't post the job. I answered it. Someone has to put down the deposit, the clerk says, with the flat patience of a man paid by the hour to be patient. 5 names on a charter, 1 deposit. That's how it works. Then split it 5 ways, Senna says, already reaching for her own purse, the kind of person who solves logistical arguments by simply absorbing the cost of having one. I'm not putting in more than my share just because you're in a hurry to be generous, Orsa says, not unkindly, but firmly enough that Senna's hand stops halfway to the counter. It's not generosity, it's efficiency. It's you trying to make yourself useful before anyone's decided what useful looks like. That lands closer to true than Senna would like, and she doesn't have a fast comeback for it, which is its own small data point about how this is going to go. Bram solves the actual problem by the simple expedient of putting down 1/5 of the deposit himself, wordlessly, and sliding the rest of the coin pouch toward the others to split without comment. The clerk, visibly relieved, starts processing the charter before anyone can object to the method. Efficient, Orsa says, approving. Wasn't trying to be a tiebreaker, Bram says. Just wanted to stop listening to this. Same thing, from where I'm standing, Wick says, and counts out his share with the air of a man conceding a point he'll bring up again later. What nobody addresses, what nobody, it turns out, particularly wants to address, is who's actually in charge of any of this. Senna waits for someone to claim it. Wick waits for someone to claim it so he can decide whether to undermine them. Orsa has no interest in claiming it. Tamsin is too busy reading the charter's fine print about cargo weight limits to notice the silence has a shape. Bram already has an opinion about leadership and isn't sharing it with strangers on day 1. So we're not deciding that today, Senna says, half a question. We're deciding it never, possibly, Wick says. Seems to be working so far. It is, in fact, working, in the specific way that things work when nobody's checked carefully whether they're actually working or just haven't broken yet. They board the airship still unresolved on the matter, 5 names on 1 charter and not 1 chain of command between them, and somehow that turns out to be fine. For now. The deck settles into its mid-flight rhythm an hour out from the dock, engine drone steady underfoot, cloud cover breaking apart below into ragged gray-white islands, the city already shrunk to a smear of brass and smoke behind them. Orsa has found the one stretch of rail closest to the hull's center mass, as far from the open drop on either side as the ship's geometry allows, and is gripping it with both hands in a way she'd deny, if asked, was anything close to fear. You don't have to hold it that hard, Tamsin says, arriving at the rail a few feet down, not unkindly. The ship's not going to fall out from under us. I know that. Your hands don't. Orsa doesn't loosen her grip, but she does look over, with the particular expression of someone deciding whether a comment deserves a real answer. I don't like trusting something I didn't grow and can't talk to. You talk to trees? I listen to them. Different thing. Orsa nods toward the engine housing a few feet further down the deck, where Tamsin has been not so subtly drifting for the last several minutes. You don't have that problem, apparently. Tamsin's already half leaning over the housing's outer casing, watching the regulated burn of alchemical fuel through a narrow viewing slot, something close to delight on her face. It's not that I trust it, it's that I understand it. There's a difference. Is there? Trust is hoping it won't fail you. Understanding is going exactly how it would if it did and exactly why it isn't. She traces a gloved finger along a seam in the casing without touching the hot metal beneath. This one's well built. Older design, but cared for. Somebody on this crew loves this engine. Orsa considers that, the idea of loving something built rather than grown, and finds she doesn't have an immediate counter for it, which surprises her more than she expects. I suppose that's not so different from a good axe. Or a good horse. High praise from you. Don't get used to it. They stand like that a while, in a silence that isn't quite comfortable and isn't quite hostile either. Orsa's knuckles still pale on the rail, Tamsin's attention still half on the engine's quiet, patient hum, until the cloud cover breaks fully apart beneath them and the ground reappears, a long, green-brown smear of farmland giving way to hills. It's not terrible, Orsa admits, looking down despite herself. The view? No, Tamsin agrees, it isn't. Neither of them says anything else for a while. It is an agreement, exactly. It's something quieter than that. Two very different kinds of unease and wonder, sitting next to each other without needing to resolve into the same thing. Below deck, in a cargo hold stacked with crates and lit by one stubborn lantern that refuses to swing in rhythm with the ship's motion, Wick is in the process of finding out exactly how far he can push Bram before something gives. So far, nothing has given. You ever smile? Wick asks, settling onto a crate across from where Bram is methodically checking his own gear. Or is that a hall policy? Smiled this morning. Wasn't worth repeating. What was it about? None of your business. Wick grins, unbothered, and tries a different angle. I'm just saying, for a man who could probably win every fight in this hall without trying, you spend a remarkable amount of energy looking like you'd rather be napping. Don't need to look like I'm trying. Saves energy for the parts that matter. That's either very wise or very lazy. Could be both, Bram says, echoing, without apparently meaning to, the exact phrase Geary used on himself the day before, and something about the coincidence makes Wick laugh, short and genuine, the first unguarded sound he's made since they boarded. You're all right, Cold Iron. Didn't ask for the verdict. Getting it anyway, free of charge. Wick leans back against the crates, watching Bram's hands move through the same gear check sequence with the unhurried precision of long habit. You're not what I expected, for what it's worth. What'd you expect? Someone who actually cares about proving something. Most fighters your size do. Bram doesn't answer right away, which is, by now, its own kind of answer. Proved what I needed to prove a long time ago. To people who don't ask anymore. He finishes the check, sets the gear aside. Doesn't leave much appetite for doing it again for strangers. Fair enough. Wick doesn't push further. There's a line there, faint but real, and even he knows better than to lean on it on day one. Instead, he produces a small, worn deck of cards from an inside pocket, the universal peace offering of people with nothing better to do and several hours left to kill. Cards? You'll cheat. Almost certainly. Deal them anyway. It isn't friendship yet. It isn't even trust, not really. Just two people figuring out, card by card, exactly how much of each other they can stand, and discovering, with mild surprise on both sides, that the answer is more than either expected. By the time the sun starts its long fall toward the horizon, the whole party is gathered on the open deck, drawn there the way people on a long journey are eventually drawn toward whatever passes for a common room, and it's Senna. Predictably, the others will later agree. Who decides the moment calls for something more formal than idle conversation? I think we should say something, she announces, to general confusion. Before the job starts in earnest, something that marks this as the start of whatever this is. A statement of purpose. A what? Wick says. An oath. Not a formal one. Just words said together, so we know we mean this. There's a beat of silence that Senna, with visible effort, doesn't let turn into retreat. She straightens, lifts her chin, and says, with the full, unembarrassed sincerity of someone who has genuinely never been talked out of doing the earnest thing in front of an audience, we five, strangers this morning, bound now by purpose, if nothing else. We go forward in good faith, to do what others won't, and to bring back what was lost. This is wonderful, Wick says, not unkindly. Truly, but are we going to do this every time, or is this a one-time event? It's not meant to be funny. Or is this a one-time event? It's not meant to be funny. That's what makes it funny. Orsa, to her own apparent surprise, finds herself almost smiling. It's a bit much. It's sincere, Senna says, with the particular dignity of someone choosing not to be wounded by something that could easily wound her. Sincerity doesn't have to be embarrassing. Didn't say it was embarrassing, Bram says unexpectedly from where he's leaning against the rail. Said it was a bit much. Different thing. High praise coming from him, Tamsin says, echoing Orsa's earlier line without knowing it, and the small ripple of laughter that follows isn't unkind, not really. It's the particular laughter of people who've decided, somewhere in the last several hours, that they're allowed to like each other a little. Senna takes the mockery the way she takes most things, squarely, without flinching, filing it away rather than letting it land as a wound. Fine, no oath, but I meant it anyway. Nobody's saying you didn't, Bram says, and means it. Later, after the others have drifted off toward food or sleep or their own private corners of the deck, it's Bram who notices Senna still standing at the rail, watching the last color drain out of the horizon, distracted in a way that has nothing to do with the view. You're somewhere else, he says, not a question. Just thinking about something he said. Sterling. She doesn't look over. Please. He said it like it cost him something to say. Probably did. You think it's nothing? Didn't say that. Bram joins her at the rail, arms crossed, settling into the kind of stillness that doesn't ask to be filled with more talking than necessary. Said I think it's something, and we don't know what yet, and there's no use deciding tonight. That's not very comforting. Wasn't trying to comfort you, trying to be accurate. He looks out at the same fading horizon. Plenty of time to find out what it means. Doesn't all have to happen at once. It isn't comfort, exactly, but it settles something in her anyway. The simple, unglamorous relief of being told the truth instead of being managed, which is more than Geary, for all his warmth, has quite managed to offer either of them yet. The crew's mess is smaller and louder than the deck, crowded with off-duty hands trading the kind of stories that get embellished a little more with every telling, and it's here, eavesdropping more than participating, that the party first hears the word that's going to follow them the rest of the night. Uncanny, one of the older crew members says, low, to a younger one who's clearly heard the story before, and clearly wants to hear it again anyway. That's the only word for it. Saw her ship pass close once, 2 weeks back. Engines weren't right. Didn't sound like any thruster I've heard, and I've heard plenty. Wrong how? Wrong like. You ever hear something breathing that shouldn't be breathing? That kind of wrong. The older hand shakes his head, half laughing at himself for saying it out loud. Probably nothing. Probably just good engineering nobody's seen yet. But the lads who fly close to her territory don't call it good engineering. They call it uncanny, and they don't say it like a compliment. Wick, listening from the next table with the studied casualness of someone who spent years learning how to eavesdrop without looking like he's eavesdropping, catches Tamsin's eye across the room. She's heard it too. Her expression doesn't change much, but something in it sharpens. Nobody at their table says anything about it directly. Not yet, not with strangers close enough to overhear the overhearing. But the word settles into the evening anyway, the way certain words do, sitting just under the surface of every conversation that follows. By the time night falls fully, and the ship begins its long, careful descent toward the edge of the captain's known territory, nobody on deck is talking much at all. It's Wick who claims the spyglass first, planting himself at the bow rail with the unhurried confidence of someone who spent a lifetime being the one who looks first and reports later. The cold up here bites harder than it did at altitude during daylight, the wind carrying a thin, sharp edge that smells like nothing at all. No smoke, no salt, no green, just the clean emptiness of air too high and too cold to carry much of anything. There, he says, after a long moment, voice gone flat in the particular way voices go flat right before they admit something they'd rather not. The others crowd in, one at a time, for their own look. A distant silhouette against a field of hard, close stars, running lights dimmed low enough that the ship reads more as absence than shape, more shadow than vessel. Most of it looks like what they expected, a working hull, patched and weathered, built for speed over comfort. It's the thruster housing that doesn't fit. Even at this distance, even reduced to silhouette and guesswork, there's something about its shape that refuses to read as machinery. No clean joins, no obvious seams, a contour too organic for brass and rivets, like something that had been cultivated rather than constructed. That's not built, Tamsin says quietly, almost to herself, taking her turn with the glass and not lowering it for a long moment after. That's grown. Nobody corrects her. Nobody asks her to explain what she means, mostly because none of them are sure they want the explanation yet, and because the word grown, not built, has already done exactly what it needed to do, settling into the night air alongside Uncanny and refusing, quietly, to leave. The ship descends another degree, the captain's silhouette drawing slowly closer against the stars, and 5 people who've spent one full day learning how to be a party at all stand at the rail in silence, watching something none of them can yet name, and none of them, for once, have anything left to joke about.